It is my honor to introduce to you Reverend Aaron Payson, who is the minister at the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Worcester, Mass. And if there's something involving trauma response, crisis, homelessness, or grieving, Aaron is involved in it. He and I met through our collaborative work with Religious Community for Reproductive Choice, doing a program called Compassionate Care. And I fell in love with Aaron then. And so he has been my brother for these many, many years. And so, Aaron, thank you so much for being in this space with us today. And I turn it over to you as we are reflecting on how to be grounded in the fire. And that's not the actual word, but go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for coming and spending time with us this evening. When Carrie asked me if I would offer an evening of prayer, I spent a lot of time thinking about where we are in the world today and what kinds of things have moved me and inspired me and challenged me over the years. And as I was thinking about that, what was coming across my computer screen was the reporting about all of the various wildfires that are going on in the world right now. At this very moment in the United States, there are almost 100 wildfires burning. There are hundreds of wildfires burning at this moment in Canada. And across the globe at this very moment, there are about 25,000 wildfires that are burning. And I'll show you in a moment what that looks like. And I became painfully aware at that moment that not only were we experiencing the human and the natural devastation of wildfire, but also the renewal that comes with wildfire. At a time when many of us at that time were really contemplating the world on fire in so many other ways, whether it is the war that continues to rage in many parts of the planet, and especially the attention that's been given to Gaza in the last 6 months. The kind of warring that continues to go on in our communities with the number of gun deaths that have transpired, and the warring rhetoric that continues to plague our political processes. And so this whole idea of the world on fire, and how is it that as faithful people we enter into this reality with a different kind of consciousness, a different orientation, if you will, toward what is transpiring. I'm a fourth generation Universalist Unitarian and a second generation Unitarian Universalist minister. My father, Reverend Robert Payson, was a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which many people associate with the Amish, and they are plentiful in that part of the world. But the other part of that world is it's very, very conservative. And what has transpired over the course of my lifetime in Lancaster is the rise of the religious right, the establishment of a number of mega churches in that region, the expansion of Lancaster Bible College, which has a varied history, and one that I both respect and am challenged by. And recognizing that I grew up at a period of time dare I admit this, in the 70s and the early 80s, where there was a lot of fire and brimstone preaching. And as the only Unitarian, the son of the only Unitarian Universalist minister for about 50 miles in any given direction, there was a lot of stuff that was kind of thrown at me and at the church. And so religion to me was this juxtaposition between what I experienced in terms of my father's ministry and what kinds of things can be accomplished when a group of people of faith, attend to the well-being and the needs of people in their community. And when you experience others uh, who utilize religion as a way of bludgeoning people with the Bible. And I came into ministry understanding the potent potential of ministry because I had had that kind of upbringing. And I also was wary of the fact that religion can also cause great harm. And so the idea of brimstone and fire on the one hand, and the fire of commitment on the other, have always been kind of flowing back and forth in my soul as I learned to speak both the voice of critique when I think religion has moved beyond what it is fundamentally established to perform, and when I am inspired by all of the various religious contexts that live deeply into their faith. And so prayer this evening for me is um, a reorientation. Like all of us, I think that I find myself in moments of deep despair, not certain what the world is going to turn into, not certain what to say at any given moment, feeling the weight of the burden that the people that I serve carry, and the communities that I love carry, and wanting to be able to companion them in a way that makes for health, wholeness, justice, and peace. So my first turn was really to the work of Cornel West and Václav Havel. And it has to do with this issue of despair and the idea of hope. And both Havel and West approach the issue of hope in a similar way. And West says, you know, hope is learning how to wrestle with despair without giving despair the last um, the last word. Havel, and both he and Havel talk about the difference between hope and optimism. Optimism is the stance that things are going to get better. Hope is not about ends. It's not about whether things get better or they don't get better. Hope is about responding to the reality that we are in a way that allows us to bring the best of ourselves and each other to bear on whatever that reality is. And that for me, what has been paramount in this world that is aflame is that meditation. What is it that I am uniquely capable of bringing with others to bear on this moment in order to bring about more peace, more justice, more wholeness, more health, more well-being? And what does that require of me in this moment? And I have learned over the years that when I concentrate on those things, I ultimately am concentrating more on the world as it touches me and less about all of the things in the world that can consume me, to use fire words again. And so I want us to spend a few minutes this evening thinking about the juxtaposition of fire as rage, fire as that which consumes, and fire which is in the belly. Fire that gives us the energy to be able to persevere. Fire that not only awakens us to possibilities, but fire that is also um, makes for growth. Mm.
Aaron, you're muted.
With Ed Sheeran's haunting music lingering in our ears, I thought it appropriate to show you this map produced by Greenpeace. This is a map of all of the current wildfires that are burning across the globe. We hear a lot about the wildfires in the west of the United States and in Canada. We hear less about the fires in Africa and South America and in Europe and parts of Asia. That's 25,000 fires right now burning on the planet. And that is millions upon millions of people whose homes and livelihoods, whose communities, whose lives are at risk. Largely, this is due to the level of climate change that has occurred in the world. And I think it's important for us to understand that the threat of climate change is the threat of human extinction, not necessarily the threat of planetary extinction. Our scientists have told us that over the course of the billions of years that the Earth has evolved, there have been significant moments of catastrophic disruption that have actually promulgated life on the planet. It has caused extinctions upon extinctions, and at the same time, it has created atmospheres where adaptation have allowed for life to emerge in different forms. I was particularly taken by uh, the uh, the story of the way in which um, vertebrate animals probably evolved, and it had to do with the great floods that consumed our planet. Earlier in the planet's history, the moon was actually closer to the Earth than it is today. And scientists suggest that that means that the tidal ebb and flow on the Earth was far more significant, and that at various times the ocean tides and ocean currents would wash over the land, and they would wash sea creatures into areas that previously would not have been inhabited by such creatures, forcing them to turn fin into various form of leg and arm, enabling them to be able to crawl upon the earth. It's one way of understanding that while we are largely at fault for what's transpiring here, what we are doing is consuming ourselves, and that the planet itself will evolve, and that it's a moment of consciousness for us to think about our relationship to all of those other creatures, our way of sustaining life itself instead of just simply concentrating on human life. So I would have us think about fire in a couple of different ways in terms of what it is that we learn from our sacred scriptures. And I want to offer two visions of fire this evening, one coming from our Hebrew and Quranic scripture, and the other coming from our Christian scripture. The first is the familiar story out of Exodus 3. Moses keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Mount Horeb, the Mount of God. And there was an angel of the Lord that appeared to him in the flame of fire out of a bush. And he looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, he called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Come closer, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place in which you are standing is holy ground. And he said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Similarly, in Surah Taha, chapter 20, we hear these words. When he saw the burning bush, he told his wife to wait, as he had seen the fire whence he hoped to bring charcoal to heat the body, or light to trace the path. When he reached the burning bush, he was given a call. O you, Moses, verily I am providence. Give up your affection for your family in my supplication. Verily you are in the holy valley of Mount Sinai. I have selected you, so listen to what I reveal unto you with care. Verily I am God, accept me. There is no other God. Pray unto me and keep steady at prayers to have me in your memory forever. I'm not as familiar with the scholarship related to the Quranic scripture, but I can tell you that the rabbis interpret the image of the burning bush as actually a image of the people themselves whom Moses was leading. That it was an image that was to instill in Moses the sense that his community would not be consumed, that this fire that existed that did not consume the bush was the fire of spirit, the fire of the holy, and that this was a particular image that gave to Moses the call and gave him the courage to stand before Pharaoh and plead the case of his people. Similarly, you see the same in Surah Taha 20 when it continues, not here on this picture, but in the latter part of the surah, it talks about how God gave Moses a staff that could turn into a snake, healed the leprosy on his arm, instilled in him the confidence to be able to go forward with courage, understanding that he and his people were on a holy mission. I wonder whether we might pause in this moment for a moment of prayer. O Holy One, you whose name is known in many tongues, let your Spirit descend upon us. Help us recognize that we too shall not be consumed in the midst of all that rages around us. Instill in us the courage to speak truth to power. Help us be mindful of the gift of the Spirit, so that we might draw close to those in need around us. Help us be mindful and heart-filled, so that we might serve that which is closest to us and within us. Allow the flame that burns so brightly to exude the love that is so necessary in this moment. Allow our justice seeking and our compassionate efforts to withstand the fires of rage. the firestorms of political assassination, the firing of guns and weapons of war. Give us the ability to stand in the midst of all of this, knowing that wherever we are on holy ground. And let us treat that ground with respect and with care. Give us the wisdom to use the gifts that you have instilled in us in order for us to recreate ourselves in your image in this place, so that all of your creatures can thrive. In the name of all of that which is holy, true, good, right, and real, we give great and abiding thanks.